I'm going to apologise now for my wild hair. So I only live in Toowoomba, which is not that far away, and I forgot my hairbrush. So this morning I had to do the conditioner, finger brushing thing because I didn't have time to go get a comb. So if you see me doing this a lot, that's why. First of all, thank you to Carlina for having me today. It's wonderful to be in the room and to be talking to people in real life once again after such a turbulent few years and way too many Zoom conversations. Tough topic I've got to talk about. And I don't have the golden nugget for you all, and I'll just put that disclaimer up front. But I guess what I'm here to do today is, particularly for those delivering festivals and events, is to just get you thinking a bit different about how you manage the revenue streams for your events, how you're managing the finances of your events. And for those that are here in a government role, I guess I want you to be thinking about how you can empower festivals and events across your remit to actually be thinking more about how they can have that financial freedom moving forward. I know that's a big call because it has been a turbulent few years and a lot of festivals haven't even delivered an event for a number of years. So the thought of actually delivering a profitable event whilst also recovering some of those lost revenues from previous years is going to be and is proving quite challenging, but we can do it. Jeremy, that was amazing. Oh my God, I had goosebumps listening to that presentation. I've written that book down. I'm so onto that. Good is the new word. So that was really inspiring and wonderful to listen to. Congratulations. All right. So before I get stuck in, I thought the best way to introduce myself is just to share with you a video. This is a video that I've produced using content from festivals and events across regional Australia, and it really demonstrates my passion, which is working with festivals and events and destinations right across regional Australia to support really sustainable and viable festivals that can drive the visitor economy in destinations across the regional and rural footprint. So I'll share this video with you. Enjoy. catching that. There's so many great festivals that take place across our country. It's so exciting to watch that and to be reminded that we work in such a fun industry. So as you can see from that, a lot of what I do is actually working with events like this to support that relationship between festivals and events and tourism and the visitor economy. And I guess why I'm talking about this particular topic today is because it is challenging to run financially viable events. And I know there's different operating models that exist out there, and some of my comments are in a bit more of a general sense. But if we start to lose some of these events across regional Australia, it has a really negative impact on the visitor economy. So it's really important for us to embed really strong financial models into our festivals and events to ensure that future success. So in my mind, there's two different buckets when we look at revenue for events, and I want you to think about this for your own events. And if you are here from a government perspective, then think about those events within your local community. I like to put them in owned revenue streams. So that's a key bucket of revenue for your events. So these are revenue streams that you own. They can't technically be taken away from you, but these are things you have to work hard for. So they're things like ticketing, merchandise, food and bev sales, all of those things that we're used to at our festival and event. Then we have third-party revenue streams that support these owned revenue streams. And you'll notice I use the word support. So these are revenue streams that you do not own. They come from a third-party source, and yes, they have to be earned, but they can actually be taken away from you at any time. So they're not actually guaranteed revenue streams, and that's a bit of a mindset shift that we need to make for many events. They can be pulled from you at any point in time, so not guaranteed. These include things like grant funding, sponsorship, donation or philanthropic funding. You could even put crowdfunding and things like that into that bucket as well, although that can go into owned revenue as well, because once it's secured, you technically own it. So we start to look at revenue streams in those two different buckets. So owned revenue streams should be your bigger bucket. It's hard to put a percentage on that. A lot of people will say to me, well, how much of our revenue should actually come from third-party sources? And there's no real formula, in my opinion, for that. You actually know what works best for you, but it's really having that balance so that you're not depending on that third-party revenue stream in order to deliver your event. So if we just look a little closer at third-party revenue streams and just have a little think about that question in the bubble. What would your budget look like if you removed third-party revenue streams? You don't need to answer that, and I hope you don't fall off your chair, but have a little think about that. Can you survive without grants? Can you survive without sponsorship? I know the current environment is quite different and we're quite dependent on that external support at the moment, but in a normal environment, can you survive without those? What I want you to think about is, what do you use third-party revenue streams for? So my recommendation to clients is always, if you're accessing third-party revenue streams such as grant funding, sponsorship, donations or philanthropic funding, you want to be quite strategic in how you actually use that funding. So you want to use third-party funding for things like engaging short-term professional assistance. So that's things like professional expertise that can actually help take your event to the next level. It might be a curator or a director or a strategist to come in and help elevate your event. It might be somebody to come in to help conduct some market research so that you can improve on your event experience. Or it might be a marketing agency that comes in to extend the reach of your event. So always thinking about how you're using that third-party revenue to actually build, grow or elevate your event and the experience that you offer. It can also be used to purchase infrastructure or develop infrastructure and purchase equipment, purchase assets, but just keeping in mind we don't want to become too asset heavy. So it can be invested in things like toilet blocks or staging or site development. So really investing in the future, because what that does is it reduces your ongoing expenses for your event. You can use it also to test and develop a new experience. So if you've got an idea, a new concept, you want to add an extra day, you want to develop a new experience for your event, rather than eating into your existing event budget, source some external funding to test that idea. Or you might want to actually use third-party funding to expand into new markets. So start using third-party funding to really help you grow your own revenue streams. So be strategic about it. How can I use or leverage grant funding to actually help support the future success of our event, to grow attendance at our event, to reduce our expenses moving forward with our event? Not just to cover the shortfall of operational expenses. So the importance of owned revenue streams. These are the most important, and this is where events often, particularly events that I work with, this is the area they often need to spend a bit of time to really think creatively, because these are the revenue streams that are important to the future success of your event, because you own them, you can grow them, you can develop them, you can pivot, you can adjust, you can add new things. Being agile and being able to actually, put in new revenue streams, test new opportunities. This is where you can really ensure the future success of your event from a financial perspective. Just keep in mind, you need to listen to your attendees. I've got a couple of case studies to share with you in a moment that demonstrates this, but you want to listen. Your attendees will often drop hints or give feedback or make comment that leads to new ideas or opportunities to create a new experience in your event, to add or to value add to the existing experience, which can create a new revenue stream for your event. So listen to your attendees. Don't impact on the experience by just going and doing something radical. Really listen to your attendees about what they're saying and how you can actually enhance their experience. Ticketing is obviously a really solid revenue stream for festivals and events, so it's this user pay system. We still have a lot of events that don't have a ticketing component. They're free events, and that can certainly be challenging. And just beware if you're moving from a free event to a ticketed event, tread carefully. That can be really challenging. The other key thing is with ticketed events, and this has been on our industry's radar, particularly as we're coming back after a few years of no events, is we've just got to be careful not to be greedy. So don't impact on the visitor experience by selling too many tickets or just bumping the capacity up a little or thinking, we can get a little bit more, we'll let a few more in. And I had an interesting conversation over a cuppa just before where, that's obviously happening, where events are actually, there's the opportunity because we have the pent-up demand. We're seeing a lot of people just fronting up without pre-purchasing tickets. So there needs to be that, really gentle approach to that and making sure you're balancing that event experience and not getting too greedy with your ticket sales. And thinking more about, maybe it's not about quantity, but it's about yield. Creating year-round revenue streams, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but thinking outside the box. Events are hard work, right? We put so much energy and effort in. The thought of actually doing something more during our event time is quite overwhelming. Is there opportunity to generate passive revenue for your event outside of your event date, so that year-round passive revenue? Considering yield over volume. We're hearing this a lot at the moment in my industry, in tourism in particular. It's all about yield over volume, and it's being driven by consumer demand. So can we make sure and put a lot of emphasis and focus on delivering an exceptional experience? And for any of you that live in Queensland, you may have heard we now call it a transformational experience. So how are we actually really investing in the quality of the experience that we're offering our attendees? And you know what? Value or the money side doesn't seem to matter so much to our attendees. So focus on quality, transformational, memorable experiences for our attendees, and think about where the price point sits according to that. And diversity is key. And we've heard that in a few conversations, even in our risk management. We need to reduce that risk and reliance on one or just a few revenue streams for our events. And just another little thought provoker, I want you to have a think about, do you know with your festivals what area of your festival generates the best return? And I just want you to think about that. Do you actually know what generates the best return? All right, thinking outside the box. So creating revenue streams, it's hard. You know, you can sit around the table, talk financial strategy, create a revenue generation plan. How do we actually create new revenue for our event? We've already got ticketing. We already do merchandise. We already sell trade sites. How else do we generate revenue? This is where we need to really think outside the box. And some of you may have some great ideas, and I'd be open to hearing those. Ticketing's not thinking outside the box, but it is that user pay. That's where you've got to create that memorable experience so that the dollars is not so much on the consideration set for our attendees. Deliver and sell an amazing experience. Merchandising, you know, there's so many ways we can generate funds from merchandise, and I'll share a little example on that in a moment. It's quite an obvious one, but we need to think outside the box and not just go, we do merchandise and it just ticks over each year. Think differently about merchandising. Point 3 is something that really interests me, is, you know, creating these micro experiences within the festival. So you already have a standard festival program, call that your product if you like, but how do you add layers? Start layering on your festival program. What can you deliver behind the scenes? What are those VIP experiences that you can offer? How can you package your event? How can you collaborate with others to create a richer experience that might generate a new revenue stream for your event? Start to pull your event apart and really think about what those opportunities are. And the other thing, just thinking a little outside the box, is fee-for-service opportunities. So if you do own your own site, if you've got infrastructure and equipment that you own, can you actually lease that out? Can you hire that to other event organisers in your community? Are there opportunities to generate revenue in that side of the business? And in a similar sense, what about staff? If you do have a team, we need to collaborate more. How can you actually use your skilled team, your staff, to actually extend their reach out to more festivals and events? It could be in a consulting capacity, fee-for-service opportunities. And then, of course, we know we've got a lot of other opportunities to generate revenue through those standard, typical things that we often think about, like I said before. Food and bev, the trade sites, you know, doing things like fundraising, attending other events, commissions, advertising on our socials and our marketing assets. But it's really important to just think outside the box. And what I always say to a lot of my clients is sit around the table. It's not just about planning your event. You need to actually pull your budget apart. You need to really sit down and look at it. Where are you getting the return? What's working? What's not? What are your attendees saying? Where's the demand coming from? Is that an opportunity to elevate that aspect to generate a new revenue stream? So when you're doing that post-event process of really pulling your event apart, you should also be pulling your budget apart. You should be looking at the revenue streams. You should be looking at those cost areas and identifying where you can really start to think creatively about generating revenue for your event. A couple of case studies. You would have seen in the video clip the Henley on Todd Regatta. Such a crazy, fun event in Alice Springs in the Northern Territory. If you haven't been, put it on your radar. So this event, I really love this example because it demonstrates how they've used third-party revenue to create their own passive revenue streams, which they now have the ability to generate year-round. So basically what they did, and this is all volunteer-run, this event, they do engage temporary expertise to come in and assist in different areas, but it's run by a number of Rotary clubs in Alice Springs. What they identified really quickly through a review process was that one of the key expenses in their budget every year was hiring their marquee. So they have a big VIP area. This is in the riverbed of Alice Springs, so they have to bring everything in. Have a massive marquee, which is a VIP area, and that's a really big expense for this event because it's in a remote location, so they don't have any local suppliers. So that's a really tough expense item for them to swallow. So what they did is they actually secured state government funding and they purchased a marquee, which they now use every year. So first of all, that's taken that expense item out of their budget, which is great. However, they then identified that other festivals and events across Alice Springs were having the same problem with getting a marquee. They now hire their marquee out to other festivals and events across Alice Springs, and it generates for them tens of thousands of dollars a year, where they have to do very minimal work. So a passive income that comes in year round. They're not, dependent on their event to actually do more or increase their intensity. They simply look at their assets, understand what they have, and now they have a passive income. So thinking that's that classic example of, can you access grant funding to support your event, but then help you generate an income for you? Hey, Vicky and the team, you can probably grab the guys from Denny Ute Muster to tell you a bit more about this, better than I can. But merchandising. So a lot of us do merchandise, right? It is a core revenue stream for a lot of festivals. The thing that Denny Ute Muster have done is they've changed the way they do merchandising. So they haven't just kind of, roll it over every single year. They've actually critically looked at how they do merchandising and as a result have significantly increased their profit margin on some items. They have year-round revenue, so online. They also have a shop in Deniliquin, so there's a retail shop, so you can purchase merchandise year-round for the Denny Ute Muster. We all know the famous blue singlets, which are great, and I love how on social media, you can see people wearing their blue singlet all around the world. I still have this vision of somebody at the Eiffel Tower taking a selfie with their Denny singlet on, which I think is just classic. But creating that, demand where people want those items and really looking, I guess, at the suppliers that you're using and critically analysing, the different revenue streams within your event, such as merchandise, to make sure you're getting the best return. Is it working for you? We sometimes get so caught up just, turning the wheels and each year, it's we do that. Take a moment to pause and critically analyse who are your suppliers, what merchandise items are working, are we getting the distribution right, how can we really ramp that up? So congratulations to the Ute Muster. And the final case study I just want to share with you, and I'm sure there's lots of great examples of this that exist, but this whole idea of how you can listen to your attendees and create these micro experiences within your event that can become a really high value proposition, so a higher yielding product that exists within your particular program. A couple of examples here. First of all, the Mount Isa Rodeo in Queensland. I love this example because it really demonstrates what I was saying in terms of listen to your attendees. So the Mount Isa Rodeo in outback Queensland, they attract a large audience from Brisbane and the East Coast. A lot of people that aren't familiar with rodeo or the outback, but they want to go and have, this is their one big cowboy experience. So they head to the Mount Isa Rodeo with really no idea of what to expect, other than lots of horses and the kubras. So they go out to the Mount Isa Rodeo and they sit and they have an experience and they watch this rodeo. But what the Mount Isa Rodeo learnt a few years ago was that this audience, particularly this Brisbane kind of more metro-based audience, they're quite curious about what happens behind the scenes. What do these cowboys actually do to get themselves so psyched up that they'll jump on this insanely huge beast? So there was this curiosity about what happens behind the scenes, and they often got a lot of feedback in their surveys or just through observation. They identified that there was an opportunity to create a new experience. So they created these shoot tours. Very minimal resources required. They have a retired cowboy that actually takes people on a guided tour behind the chutes at certain times, obviously not during the actual rodeo program, but in their intervals. They take them behind the scenes and they get a really immersive hands-on experience where they meet a cowboy, they get a selfie, they put an akubra on. You imagine, right? If you've never been to a rodeo, yeah, you can go and watch one, but if you can go behind the scenes and feel like you're a cowboy, that's pretty cool. That is now a premium product that the Mount Isa Rodeo offer, and it sells out months ahead of their event every single year. They now package it up and they're looking at opportunities to extend that further. So they've listened to their audience, they've created a new experience based on demand, and now they've generated a great new revenue stream for their event. A similar example on the other side here is the Toowoomba Carnival of Flowers, my hometown. So if anyone's looking for something to do in spring, come to Toowoomba. It goes for the whole month now. It's amazing. But as part of that event is a really great food and wine festival. The typical kind of food and wine festival: music, food, wine, friends, lots of people, lots of crowds, long queues. So that event has become so popular that a few years pre-COVID, they were heavily criticised for allowing too many people in. So queues were too long for toilets. You couldn't get a drink after 7 p.m. It was ridiculous lines. It was so packed. It was shoulder to shoulder. That, along with a few other things, led the Carnival of Flowers team to actually look at, well, how do we kind of segregate the crowd? Because there's younger ones that love that. They love shoulder to shoulder, busy, that vibe. But there's also a family / a more mature crowd that wants the same experience, but they don't want to line up for everything. They don't want to be, have people sweating all over them. And, so what they did is they created what they call the Botanical Society. So basically in the Botanical Society, you get premium viewing of the stage, you get exclusive access to your own private bar, you get your own lawn area with tables, and you get your own toilet. So that now is sold as a premium experience for the Toowoomba Carnival of Flowers. They're doing this in many different areas within the festival now. So just thinking about what are those opportunities that's being fed back to you from your attendees. What are the pain points that could be turned into opportunities? Remember that video before? Good. So if someone comes to you and says, we're sick of the queues in the toilet, good. There's an opportunity. How can you turn that into an opportunity and potentially think of that as a revenue stream for your event? And the final thing I just want to leave you with is, if you don't already, I encourage you to sit down with your team. Sit down and talk about what is your financial strategy. Even if you're a community event or a not-for-profit, you have to generate revenue. You have to have that business mindset to be able to continue to develop and grow your event. So we have to be thinking about what is our financial strategies for our events moving forward. And festival owners, just block your ears for a minute, but those here that are representing government, you actually need to empower your events. We need to stop funding festivals and events for consecutive years unless they can demonstrate how they're using that funding to build financial viability. Because we're just throwing a lifeline constantly, and we need to be empowering and encouraging festivals to actually think about their financial freedom moving forward. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hi, Linda. Thanks very much. Picking up on that last comment you made and then leaping back to earlier on in the presentation where you were talking about owned revenue streams, third-party revenue streams, you made a small note around the potential that grant funding could be an owned revenue stream. That suggests that it's potentially an unconditional grant or something like that, whereas I would challenge that. The Crown are probably wanting accountability for the money, and that should always sit within the third revenue stream space, which is consistent with what you said at the end. So, I mean, are there differing views or anything like that?
Yeah, great pickup. I totally agree. So crowdfunding is this, I guess, a bit of an anomaly, and I agree it is a third-party revenue stream, but once it's committed, you own it. Yes, you still have obligations. It's kind of project-based, I guess. You know, it's a little bit different in that it sits in that third-party bucket. But once it's secured and the campaign is over, you own it then to go and do what you wish with it.
That's great. Sorry, I thought you said crowdfunding earlier on. So
Crowdfunding
is what you're saying.
Crowdfunding, sorry. No other questions? Well, thank you all very much. Have a lovely afternoon.